That'll work. All right, this week on a very special edition of The Big Show, our panel will discuss the release of Slate Magazine and NPR's list of the 75 best films from Black directors called the New Black Film Canon. Now, this list features films that over the past century, highlighting work from luminaries such as Oscar Micheaux, Spencer Williams, Usame Simbene, Spike Lee, Melvin Van Peebles, Julie Dash, Gina Prince Bythewood, and a host of others. Plus, Chris Rock is poised to make history this weekend with his new comedy special, Outrage. Now, over the next hour, we'll talk about that as well as which films should have made the new Black Film Canon list, and what does this truly encompass the entirety of the true Black experience in film. So I'm a little nervous, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We'll have all that and more in episode 528, Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. Let's go. All right, welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with Film Gordon. I am Tim Gordon. I am joined, of course, by my co-host, Charles Kirkland Jr. Charles, what's going on, bro?
Yeah, what's happening, Tim? I'm so happy to be here. This is going to be some fun.
It really will be. And of course, Julian Lytle of Adobe Network, or I don't know, Julian, what's your what's your affiliation these days, man? Who are you? Who you repping? Uh-oh, Julian is on mute.
How did
I said Julian affiliates with Julian, you know. That's what
okay.
it is.
I mean, there's a reason. We'll get to that a little later on as well. So, Julian,
things are in flux. Things are in flux. That's all it is.
Yes, I realize things are in flux, man. So, gentlemen, we got a lot to chop up and talk about today. But before we get there, Netflix, of course, sent out, I guess, the lack of a better term, presents to members of the media today to promote their historic special on Saturday night. Of course, Chris Rock's Outrage, which will record at 10 o'clock at the Baltimore Hippodrome. And what they're going to do is they're going to broadcast that show live to everybody around the world as it's happening in Baltimore. So this is different. They've never done this before. And I was thinking when they initially announced it, I was like, man, this is a big deal. And I'm like, actually, it's really not. It's just like any comedian getting up to do a set. The only difference is instead of it playing in a club or him recording it in the club, they're going to broadcast it live like a real game. So Chris Rock has been in the game since 1984 as a comedian, man. He'll be fine. The show will be fine. Charles, I know you have thoughts on this, man. What do you think about Chris Rock's, what they're trying to do with this special this weekend?
Well, I think they're trying to go for the unedited, uncensored version of whatever Chris has to say. And we're all assuming that he has a lot to say for some reason. I don't know, but
he's going to talk about Will Smith this weekend. We've already said it, man. So it's not like it's a surprise, man.
So, I think it's cool that they're trying to do. It's like having a pay-per-view, but without the pay-per-view. So, I'm looking forward to it. I kind of wish that I could have made it up to Baltimore to see the show live, but live here, live there, it is what it is.
So, Julian, I got a text from a friend of mine who actually has tickets, to which my reply was, I'm good, man, because I'm gonna watch the same show you watching. So it's not like I'm in the room. Yeah, but it's live. So it's like, So, Julian, are you gonna take some time to watch Chris Rock, man, on Saturday night?
Yeah, I plan to. I almost forgot that it was happening this early. I didn't remember, like, oh snap, it's happening this Saturday. I thought it was like 2 Saturdays away from now, but hey, man, they got to test out how to do live streaming if they want to compete. They want to make sure Disney don't run up on them. They need to get into sports. If I want to get into my puck bag, you think on the business level, they've never done live events. Everybody else do live events in some type of way.
Some way.
Disney at least got ESPN. They do live every Sunday, 2 times during the week. They're NBA. So
Right.
Peacock got wrestling. Paramount got football. So if you're trying to get in this sports bag, you gotta show everybody you can do it.
There you go. So, all right. So 10 o'clock Saturday night, Chris Rock's Outrage. Yes, and there will be Will Smith jokes. And I'm sure that he's been, it's almost been a year since the smack. So he's probably really got these jokes down. So, like I said with Chris, man, my thing with Chris is that, I used to love Chris before Dave emerged. And now Dave is kind of my favorite. But Chris, I still think has the ability to do a Bring the Pain. So he might shock us all, man, and create like a classic. He hasn't made a classic to me in like 25 years. It's been a minute for Chris Rock, man. Look at Julian thinking, like, what was the last, like, what was the other one he did right after Bring the Pain? Bigger and Blacker.
Bigger and Blacker was good.
Bigger and Blacker. So, yeah. So,
and it was one after
what
that.
Have he done since then? Tambourine. So it's been a minute. Charles, am I wrong? Is Chris?
No, I think you're pretty accurate. But he's older, so he's done. People get older; they don't do as much as they used to. So
age ain't got nothing to do with it. Him and Chappelle. Chappelle is a little younger, but Chappelle done put out several bangers, man, between the last time Chris had Bigger and Blacker and today. So just saying,
he makes more movies and stuff though, which I think
he does.
As Dave focuses purely
on stand-up comedy,
stand-up, and using this Netflix deal to really put things out. Chris Rock was like, I'm gonna go write and direct a couple movies. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that.
Right.
Like, I don't think his focus was directly on making stand-up specials, even though he was touring. There was a period where him and Dave and Kevin Hart was all touring. I was like, all right, then with a special, bro. Like all three of y'all together, like.
Right. I'm surprised that hadn't shown up on Netflix yet. I'm surprised.
Like y'all got this banger, right? It's like that's like a new Kings of Comedy. You got all three of y'all random guests, like. Where was that? But yeah, it didn't. I don't know why. So it's up to him.
Don't worry. In a couple of years, Questlove will find a hidden tape and produce it.
You ain't lying. That's kind of his thing, man. Now, also this weekend, Creed is coming out. Creed 3, I should say. And we're not going to review that on our show today. I don't really want to spend a lot of time. No, I'm not spending a lot of time talking about Creed 3. Creed 3 is a banger. What I really want to spend time on, and I know this is Julian's favorite subject, is that a couple of weeks ago, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania came out and it made $105 million. And then Charles called me on Monday to remind me, hey man, did you see the numbers over the weekend? And I did not. And that movie made $32 million in week 2. And the prospects for it this weekend don't look much better because Creed 3 is going to pack them in. And, that sound that you usually don't associate with a Marvel film. But Ant-Man and the Wasp, man, like, rah! We told you, you read the reviews. The reviews weren't really stellar for this one. There was a lot of people who were not big fans of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So it's not like I'm speaking out of school. Fellas, jump in. Are we... And people keep saying, y'all tripping, man. The first one didn't make that much money and it'll still recoup. I'm like, bruh, you in trouble because Creed 3 is going to crush. Literally will crush Ant-Man this weekend. Julie, let me start with you, man, because I know, Marvel is your favorite subject to discuss with us.
You got a decision. Do you want to see Jonathan Majors looking swole, knocking Bammers out, or do you want to see him in some ridiculous outfit with a blue faceplate, screaming, overacting, trying to make 10 pages of dialogue work for hours of a movie? Like, nah, bro. If you don't go see the only heavyweight fight of the year that actually people going to care about, and that's Creed 3 with the good anime touches in it. The anime, you want to talk about comic books and geek stuff? Well, guess what? Creed 3 better than that too. You like Naruto? It's in there. You like Dragon Ball Z? It's in there. Like Hajime no Ippo? It's in there. You like Megalobox? That's in there too. You like Punch Out? That's in there. All that's in there.
All right. Watch this. Thank you, Julian. Charles, I forgot the majors versus majors this weekend. So you have majors, the Marvel major versus the major of Rocky. So What do you think, man?
Well, I mean, it's no contest. We know that Creed 3 is going to just knock everybody out of the box. But the question is, what will Cocaine Bear do? Because I mean, it had a small opening last week, coming in second place, but word of mouth is really pumping up the sales for this film. So it may be in the second spot, and that man dropped the 3 this week with what's happening with Cocaine Bear.
That's right.
Julian,
Osaito
look at
de
my face, Julian.
cocaína. Cocaína. Let's get it.
Bro, you weren't at the screening with me and Julian, man. Me and Charles, bro.
Yeah, because it was too far.
Watching Cocaine Bear.
That was great.
That
movie was
ambulance
fantastic.
scene was worth the price of admission, man. I didn't even pay, and I would pay again to watch that one scene in the film where it was like,
it's the best superhero film of the year so far.
Wow.
There you go.
Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear.
As Rodney Dangerfield said to Eddie Murphy 3 years after telling Eddie he didn't have any career, who knew? Who knew that Cocaine Bear would be that much fun, man? So, all right. So now we're gonna pivot, man. We got almost the whole show. I just wanted to get that other stuff out the way. So, Julia Lytle, as soon as this list dropped, sent me a text. And before I even opened it, I have the same reaction I have to every list, whether it's the 50 greatest MCs or the 500 of this, the 100 of that. It's all subjective, man, right? But what I will say is when Julian sent me this one, and then I called Charles up immediately thereafter, and I said, I might, as the song says, I might not know history or geometry. Tim Gordon knows movies, and I watched a lot of them. So I was ready for this. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a show out of this. And hence, here we are. So let's talk a little bit before we go through this list of who are the principles that are behind the list, because I think that part is really important. Now, Kevin Avery, who's a comedian and podcaster, don't really know him. I do know Aba Babineau. I do know her.
Wait a minute.
When I say I know people, I'm not saying I know them as in name. I'm talking about like our paths have crossed. So I know Ada, right? Ben B. Banks, a filmmaker, never met her, never met Kamau Bell. Stephen Boone is a film critic. I don't know who Stephen Boone is. I'm sure he's accomplished in what he does. Todd Boyd, I've never crossed paths with, but I've watched him. He's really a scholar. I respect him. Charles Burnett, I've met, and he inspired me with his film when I first got in the game, To Sleep with Anger. So he's one of my heroes. Maya Cade is the curator of the Black Film Archive. I don't know Ashley Clark or K. Austin Collins, Keith Corson. Robert Daniels, we met. I'm gonna leave that there. Julie Dash, we've met. Eric Deggans is a Black Real Award voter. Know him. Ernest Dickerson, we've met. Stephen Dunn, don't know that person. I know Ava DuVernay. Carl Franklin, I've met. Raquel Gates, I've met. Henry Louis Gates, I've met. I'm just going through the list. Is there anybody else on here? Wesley Morris, I know him. He's down with NPR, B.A. Barker. And as for transparency's sake, I work at NPR, who also, along with Slate, curated this list. Of course, Gina Prince Bythewood's My People. Dana Stevens from Slate is a part of this. Jacqueline Stewart, who is on TCM and is now the Chief Artistic and Programming Officer for the Academy Museum. Rebecca Theodore Vachon is a friend of our show. Robert Townsend I've met, and I don't know these other people. So I say all that, fellas, to start that the parameters that they laid out for this list is that they wanted to talk about the 75 best films by Black directors, right? So the first thing I thought of is, I said, okay, well, that's kind of narrow, because if you're talking about a century of Black films condensed into a list of 75, only by Black directors, we'll start by saying that it is not the totality of the Black film experience, because there are a tremendous amount of movies, which some of them I will go through. And I was sharing with Charles before you got on the air, Julian, that I only started like within the last hour putting a list together. And I had to stop at like 1995 because I was going chronologically year by year and really thinking through which films, I had two separate lists, like movies that were left off of Black directors and then movies that had no Black directors. So I made two lists, right? So I think
I meant to ask you before we got started. Did you start at current times and go back, or where did you?
I started at the beginning. I mean, to me, it was easy because, they're doing the list chronologically. I started at the beginning, right? So I only got as far as I think I stopped at like 1995 because I ran out of time. If I had another hour, I could probably give you a more complete list. But so, Julian, before I start unveiling stuff that I have on lists, because I literally wrote it out because I wanted to make sure. And if you're at home recording this, please reference this because I'm going to give you some movies that that aren't on this list that should be on this list, or movies you need to know about, right? So Julian, you've had a couple of days to really process and think about this, man. And I know you came at me with some films that were within the last 25 years or 30 years of movies you thought that were obvious that they left off the list. Were you able to find some more films and really processing and thinking about it?
Yeah, I guess my main issue was like, why did they decide to make it so narrow in regards to calling it the Black Film Canon?
That's my problem. There it is right there.
Have movies that are only directed by Black filmmakers, because some things that I would consider the Black Film Canon may not have had Black directors, but had Black writers, producers, or story by credit. Like, I'm looking at the list, it's like, you ain't got Coming to America on this. That's one of the most Blackest movies. That's Black Panther before Black Panther. Like, I was like, there's no real Hughes Brothers films on this list.
It's funny you said it because I was writing all that stuff down today.
There's only one John Singleton movie.
Look. You said no who?
There's only one John Singleton movie on there, right? There's only Boys in the Hood, right?
Yeah.
But there's no Rosewood, there's no Baby Boy, there's no Higher Learning.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of people.
That's some weird.
I'm gonna talk about that I thought, and some of the movies that were on there. We need to talk about that but I will get to that. So that's Julian's initial thoughts. So Julian, you have anything else before I throw it to Charles?
No concert films really. Like, they have, I guess it was weird because I guess if the most dominant cultural thing is hip hop, and that's a very important part of 90s Black film, you're not gonna have like any like rap based concert film. Like, I was looking like, okay, you can't have The Show because that has a white director. You can't have Rhyme and Reason because that have a white director. But I say, okay, like, so what about the Rockefeller concert movie or the Black Album? Like, I'm sitting here thinking like, all right, so you don't have that. You don't have the original Kings of Comedy. You don't have.
I was going to say, yeah. What about?
Man, I mean,
Raw is not on the list.
It's problematic. Julian hit the nail on the head, and I was about to get there, but I didn't get there. You can't call a list of only films by Black directors the Black canon. So two things jump out, right? Julian didn't hit this one, and Charles, I'm gonna throw it to you in a second. I think, first of all, you should have done 100 movies, because if you did 100 movies, that would have helped you. That would have given you a little more leeway. 75 is a really interesting number. So they initially had 50, and then they went to 75, and I'm thinking the list really is very heavy from 2000 to now, right? I don't know the number, but there are a lot of movies from 2000 and now, and I'm thinking y'all missed a bunch, and I'm going to go through them as soon as Charles. So Charles, give me your initial impressions, man, before we get started and really take a deep dive.
We were talking about comedy movies. I'm like, what happened? We couldn't do stand-up comedy. Eddie Murphy's Raw needs to be on the list. And okay, so, and this is the limitation with Black directors again. What about The Color Purple? I mean, I know it's by a white director, but I mean, everybody else behind the scenes is black. This is you can't tell me that this is not canon, that's not part of the Black Film Canon. So yeah, there's a lot of flaws with this list, and like you said, I appreciate that they put Oscar Micheaux in here within the gates as the first film, but there were a couple other things on the list from back in that time that should have been included as well.
Well, let me get started. All right, fellas, so y'all ready? So this is what I came up with. Now, I told Charles, I found 22 movies between the birth of cinema, and I had to stop because I ran out of time when we had to do the show. I think I stopped at like 1995. So I found 22 movies that you can make a case that should be on this list. And let me go through them right now. And then we'll talk about the movies that encompass the Black experience that aren't on the list at all because they are white directors. So to Charles's point, 1925, Paul Robeson made his debut playing dual characters in an Oscar Micheaux film called Body and Soul, which is absolutely got to be canon. Like if you putting Within Our Gates on the list, got to have Body and Soul. It's the first appearance from Paul Robeson.
Yeah.
Another film which is really important by Black husband and wife couple, and I've seen this movie and I know it exists and it's really good. It's called Hellbound Train, like one of the first Black horror films that was made. Now they had 11 p.m. on there, which I watched, which was really interesting. But and again, I understand that I read off the list of the people that made up the jury that curated that list. So I'm like, okay, well, that's good. So Hellbound Train, you can go online and check that out. Another film that didn't make the list, they had one Spencer Williams film on there from 1941. What was that movie called?
Blood of Jesus.
The Blood of Jesus, right? Another classic film from Spencer Williams that didn't make the list was Dirty Gertie from Harlem, USA from 1946. So I put that on the list. Then I skip ahead to 1967, the very first film that Melvin Van Peebles ever made, which predates Sweetback by 4 years, was a film that that he submitted to a French film festival and it won. It was called The Story of a 3-Day Pass, which they just remastered and put out. So I put that on the list. There's another film that I talked to Charles about. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, Julian, from 1968. An adaptation of John Ford's The Informer called Uptight, which is a really good film. You can go online and check it out. It's got a score by not Harold Melvin and Blue Notes. What's the group? They had the song Time is Tight, Booker T and the MGs. So, and then the other thing I figured out when I was making my list is that there's a lot of canon films from the 1970s because soundtracks were so instrumental. And on their list, they had both Shaft and Superfly, but then there are films like Cotton Comes to Harlem.
Where's that? Where's that? I was like, it's Ozzie Davis.
Ozzie Davis.
The movie's crazy.
Had that on the list. And they never heard of, I guess, Hugh Robinson's Belinda, which a lot of people have never seen. Buck and the Preacher from Sidney Poitier. See, the Sidney Poitier disrespect was really the one that killed me because Sidney Poitier, I've got like 4 or 5 of his movies on this list. None of his movies made their list. So there's Buck and the Preacher, Uptown Saturday Night. Let's do it again.
All by white directors, so they discount.
No, these are all black
Sidney
directors. These are all black directors. Charles, these are all black directors. Hugh Robertson, Sidney Poitier, Thomasine, Thomasine and Bush Ride, Gordon Parks Jr., Uptown Saturday Night, Sidney Poitier, Mahogany from Barry Gordy, Michael Schultz, who a lot of people remember him from Cooley High, which made the canon list, doesn't get any props for Which Way Is Up, Grease Lightning, and he also directed, what was the Bustin' Loose? Where he didn't get credited, but Oz Scott got the credit. But Michael Schultz did more than Cooley High. You got, like I said, Stir Crazy. Now, here's the crazy thing. Stir Crazy, Julian, I don't know if you know this, was the first movie directed by an African American or a Black person that made $100 million. Portier and Wilder and Stir Crazy. How is that not a culturally important film that you would leave off of a list?
I almost think things like Uptown Saturday Night, Let's Do It Again, because they didn't put that on the list because Bill Cosby's involved. So that gets into a weird concept of what's canon if you can just erase, not put something in, even though that's where it gets messy, because it could be canon even if you don't like the person that's in it. But like, I was looking at this like Sidney Poitier, I was like, he got joints. Like, y'all ain't got no movies in here about Richard Pryor, and he purposely was working with Black directors. Like what is going? Like, I was really confused. It's like, y'all only got 2 movies from the 70s.
I mean, the 70s. Like, the 70s are real light. It's real light.
It's real light, man. So, and I'm gonna, let me just get through this list of the movies with Black directors. These are all movies that should have been on the list. Now, the fact that you got Do the Right Thing, Crooklyn, and Malcolm X on the list, I'm still not understanding how you don't have She's Gotta Have It, School Days, which are both Spike Lee, along with Jungle Fever, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, New Jack City, Deep Cover, Boomerang, Menace to Society, and then I had to stop because I ran out of time. So that was the list of 22 movies that literally you can make an argument for all of the movies you're on your list. These movies could have been included as well, especially if you had gone to 100. So anybody, so again, there's tons of stuff. Like I didn't get the Ray, Badass, stuff in the 2000s. Love Jones, which
Set It Off ain't in here. Set It Off ain't in here. That's crazy.
Poetic Justice ain't in there. Poetic Justice for me.
It can't be canon. It cannot be canon. I mean, you can call it your list, but you can't call it canon because there are too many omissions. And then the Spike Lee thing, I'll get back to that in a second. I thought that was weird, right? If you want to talk about Spike Lee, you gotta talk about She's Gotta Have It, because for me, that's the movie that literally kicked off the modern day Black film movement in 1986. Because before Spike Lee came along, there was
dead.
Notable.
It was quiet.
Yeah.
We saw Mars Blackman everywhere after that movie. People didn't even know who Mars Blackman was until because they had seen him on Michael Jordan commercials, and then they had to go back and see She's Gotta Have It to know who he was. But I mean, that movie, it's the cornerstone. The cornerstone.
Well, I mean,
it's
oh, go ahead.
My bad. It's like, it's weird because it's almost like he's the one filmmaker that actually isn't on there enough. Because as you say, well, She's Gotta Have It. But if you go from She's Gotta Have It until Clockers, like his run was untouchable. Like he was essentially the Black cinema. You don't have John Singleton. You don't have the Hughes brothers.
You don't have Mario Van Peebles. You don't have Keenan Ivory Wayans. You
got a whole. It's
people.
like
Robert
all the
Townsend.
people. Because he was on some Woody Allen stuff. He's like I don't like Woody Allen's kind of trash. But like in comparison, they were on some, he was like, okay, this is the Black New Yorker experience. And he was putting out a movie a year, just like Woody Allen does. And if you look at a canon of cinema, how many movies on there got Woody Allen name on it? Once you get to like Manhattan. Woody Allen has like 20 movies if you talk about movie canon, right? This Spike need to have at least 12 on there. Like, there's no Clockers on there. Who wasn't talking about Bamboozled? You talking about movie canon, and you ain't gonna have a movie talking about movie canon and Black people within. Come on, bruh. Because this is a difficult movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, man, this is the problem when you make a list, and it's ironic because we, as the Black Reel Awards, had a meeting earlier this year about we were going to grab maybe 15 or 20 film critics and do something similar. I was going to do a list of the top 100 Black films of all time. And Black would be the same criteria we use to give out our awards, right? So if you've got a white director, as a rule, we wouldn't nominate those. But if a film talks about the Black experience, if the POV or the story is Black, like A Soldier Story is directed by Norman Jewison, that's a Black film. That's a film about a group of Black folks as a black captain, or I think he was a captain, comes in, the first officer that they'd ever seen. So that's a black story, right? Ray is directed by, forget the guy's name, but that's a black story. That's the biopic of Ray Charles. So that's a black story. Michael Mann did Ali. It doesn't make the story less authentic because a white guy did it. You know, my favorite, and I talked about this, is there's a film called Nothing But a Man, right? And Charles has heard me say this a bunch of times. It's reviewed as the blackest movie ever made by a white director, which tells a story in 1960 South, I think it was Alabama, of a love story between like a guy working on the railroads who meets a school teacher, and all of the racism they encountered, the class, the sexism, all that stuff. And it was by Michael Romer. It's a white dude. So when you talk about Black Film Canon, you gotta look at Black film or the experience of Blackness in cinema in totality. You can't only say we're gonna call it canon because, you know, we found 75 movies that we liked. I mean, there's some movies on there like I personally would not have put 11 p.m. on my list. I would not have. I watched it. It was cute. I liked Alma's Rainbow. I thought that there was a push to get some LGBTQ films on there, which is why you got Cheryl Dunye's Watermelon Woman, which I liked. There's a film called Looking for Langston. I would not have put that on my list. And not because it's LGBTQ. There were other movies that I thought were better. I would not have put that on my list.
You know,
so I would not have put it on my list.
Like Bebe's Kids isn't on that list, and it's one of the first nationally released animated features directed by a black director, written by Reginald Hudlin. Like, if you're talking canon, right, and you grow up in a town, you talk like representation, and this is the only animated movie in the theaters when I growing up that was animated by a black person.
Yeah,
about black people.
Yeah,
based on a black comedian stand-up. I don't know. What else do you need to be canon?
Well, I'm gonna do some decades for you guys right now, and I'm gonna start in the 20s of movies that were directed by 9 African Americans that are canon and should be on the list. And this is just from the 1920s that didn't make it, right? I want to say, I got 3. Hearts of Dixie, 1929, Hallelujah. Ironically, the Oscars were 2 years old. King Vidor, who directed Hallelujah, which was probably one of the first like big budget all black films, he got nominated for Best Director for the Academy Awards for Hallelujah in 1929. There's also Black and Tan and the St. Louis Blues, both from the 20s, right? The 30s, The Emperor Jones, which was Paul Robeson, doesn't make the list. The Initial Imitation of Life doesn't make the list. No Green Pastures with Rex Ingram. Showboat, of course, again with Paul Robeson. Dark Manhattan from Ralph Cooper. And also, let me go back to Showboat for a second because I shared this fact today. James Whale directed Showboat with Paul Robeson. Does that name sound familiar to anybody?
No.
James Whale directed Frankenstein for Universal.
Oh,
wow. Yeah. Dark Manhattan featured Ralph Cooper, who later went on to be an MC at the Apollo. The Bronze Buckaroo, Herb Jeffries, who just passed recently as a black singing cowboy. That should be canon. So that ends my 30s run. The 40s, Stormy Weather, Cabin in the Sky. We talked about Intruder in the Dust, Pinky, Home of the Brave, and Lost Boundaries. Now, Lost Boundaries, Home of the Brave, Pinky, and Intruders were really important because those were the 4 race movies that came out in 1949, which set the stage for Sidney Poitier's interest in 1950 with No Way Out, which has to be canon because it's the first film from Sidney Poitier directed by Joseph Mankiewicz in 1950. Let's see, we have No Bright Road with Dorothy Dandridge, and also No Carmen Jones. Blackboard Jungle, Poitier in 55. Edge of the City, Poitier again. Island in the Sun, which is Harry Belafonte. Happy birthday to you, sir. The Defiant Ones. I don't need to say anything other than Sidney Poitier and Tony Curtis. and then 2 films from Harry Belafonte, which in his 50s run, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil, Odds Against Tomorrow, Porgy and Bess, which we've taken out of circulation, but you got to acknowledge that this was a film with Sammy Davis Jr., Sidney Poitier, Dorothy Dandridge, and a bunch, Brock Peters, and a bunch of others. And then the remake of Imitation of Life ends my 1950s run. So any thoughts before I go into the 1960s on films that I think make up the totality of the Black film or Black cinema experience in America?
No, that's all stuff that works to me. Like I'm sitting here when I first saw this, like how I guess it was I didn't read the thing first before reading the list. And I was like, how's Stormy Weather not on this? Like I was a little kid, I know how to watch Stormy Weather. Like that was like important. I was basically forced to watch Stormy Weather. like you had to watch Stormy Weather. Like where's this? This is supposed to be a Black list.
Charles?
Again, the reason why a lot of your films are because of the director, but I mean these films are essential to Black history, and if you can't have canon without man, I watched No Way Out just again with my son just last week. That's how that movie. I mean, Sidney Poitier. It tells the story of how a Black doctor. You know,
had to treat a racist, a racist brother. That was the thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just a powerful film, and I don't know how that. Well, I guess again, the whole thing is just flawed to me. This whole list, and I know when you were reading off all the names at the beginning, I was like, you know, I know somebody who works at NPR, who's like a real film. Really knowledgeable of films. How did they not call? We got to pump up your creds, man, because you should have been first on the list. First on the list.
It's a secret identity.
Black Real Awards, man. If you can't put those two together, like, what? I don't need to say anymore, man. I'm like, all right. So let's go through, and I'm trying to hit these so you guys can see where I'm going with this. We're gonna hit the 60s right now, right? And this is what I call the age of Poitier, right? So none of these movies are on the list. No Sergeant Rutledge by John Ford. Oh. Now, let me back up for a second because Charles was talking about No Way Out. No Way Out is really, really important because this was not just Sidney Poitier as the lead, but Sidney Poitier was a professional. He's playing a doctor in a movie in 1950. So that's what, 50, 70 years ago. He debuts playing this role as a strong doctor, right? We go to 1960, John Ford, who of course has 4 Oscars, does Sergeant Rutledge. Woody Strode is cast, really important film. You gotta have that movie on any movie list. There's Paris Blues and A Raisin in the Sun, 2 Sidney Poitier movies in 1961. Diane Carroll, of course, is in Paris Blues. Raisin in the Sun, when I did my list 25 years ago of the top 100 movies, that movie finished #1. I probably watched it, 100 times, man. Easily, to me, the best performance Sidney Poitier ever gave. Lilies of the Field, he won the Oscar. Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee in Gone Are the Days, or Pearly Victorious from 1963. Nothing But a Man, I talked about that earlier. A Patch of Blue, another Poitier film, as well as Duel at Diablo. And then what I call the 67 3-pack, In the Heat of the Night, To Serve with Love, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Putney Swope, directed in 68 by Robert Downey Sr. For the Love of Ivy, another film with Sidney Poitier in 1968. And I'm going to end there and just take a quick break before we go to 1970s. Fellas, the 60s, as you can tell, I don't know how many, but it's dominated by Sidney Poitier. And the fact that you would do a movie canon list and not include at least 5, I think I had 7 films from the 60s that were Sidney Poitier, 3 in 67, 2 in 61. You gotta come up with a rule that allows folks who are contemporary to understand just how significant Sidney Poitier was. And this list has no Sidney Poitier, not even as a director of films. He's not on there, period, which I think is an amazing oversight by what I think are a really talented group of filmmakers and quote unquote film critics and historians. I don't get it. I don't understand that at all.
Well, the 60s was real light as far as it was concerned, because even on their list, they only have maybe 3 or 4 movies, I think, from the 60s. And Symbio, Taxiplasm, whatever thing, Psycho.
I watched that, man.
I don't think that should have been on the list. I think they were really grasping at straws for movies by Black directors, and how that one made it on the list.
It was William Greaves' first film, and I get that, right? So they had Greaves' first film when they had Charles Burnett. When you get to the 70s, where you see Killer of Sheep, which is an important film, I get it, right? The LA Rebellion. Julie Dash has a movie on the list, Daughters of the Dust, which I think is beautiful, from 1990 or 92. So yeah, I understand Uzan Palsi's film Sugarcane Alley is on there. I get it, right? I get the fact that you saluted these independent filmmakers. I find it interesting. 1970s, Halle Jarima, whose film Ashes and Embers on the list, as well as Sankofa. It was Halle Jarima, Julie Dash, Charles Burnett. I'm trying to think. And the other person that was a part of what they called the LA Rebellion was Janai Fanaka. Nobody remembers that he did Penitentiary. Penitentiary didn't make the list. You had all these other independent films that were on there. Why is Janai Fanaka not on the list? It is funny to me. It's like you can't cherry pick and choose, like, I'm going to salute these 6 people, but not these people over here. If you've got films by Uzan Palsi, if you got films by Julie Dash, if you have Ayoy Chinzira, of course, with her brilliant film from 1994, Alma's Rainbow, right? I like these movies, right? But my point is that I guess you either have to make some hard choices, because Penitentiary was a cult classic. I mean, there were a lot of people that liked Penitentiary. I didn't even put on my list because I haven't gotten to the 70s yet. We're going to hit that in a second. But there's some other movies. There was so much output in the 1970s. There were a lot of movies like Truck Turner I wouldn't put on the list, or Emma's Revenge, or some of those movies. I wouldn't put those movies on the list, but I have a list of movies that I thought were really, really important. So before I crack my 70s, man, any other thoughts about what I just said as it relates to, there was really a push for independent filmmakers. It was funny to me that you got Sweetback on the list, but you don't have Story of a 3-Day Past, which predates that and set the stage, nor do you have Watermelon Man, which was another Melvin Van Peebles movie with Godfrey Cambridge in 1970.
You couldn't have Watermelon Man and Watermelon Woman on the list.
Yeah, you could. It's Julius and his canon. Yeah, you could. All right, so no comments? All right, so let me go.
That's a great comment about Penitentiary. I thought it came out in the 70s, but yeah, I've seen that movie like...
I think Penitentiary is either 79 or it's 80. It's one of those years. Jane Kennedy, Leon Isaac Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
I
had a love affair going on with Jane Kennedy back in the day. That was my movie.
All right, so these are some films that I think should always be on any list when you're talking about Black canon. And I'll start with 1970, The Landlord, Hal Ashby. If you've never seen this movie, this is one of my favorites, man. I love the last scene where a white guy played by Beau Bridges, who has taken over a brownstone. He is offered an opportunity to come down and see the school that's in the basement. He was like, I dare you. And it ends with all these young children who are dispensing all of this knowledge that they've been homeschooled. And it ends with, I am Black and I am beautiful. I am Black. And like 4 or 5 kids. And the last one, this young girl goes, I am Black and I am beautiful. And he says, that's the stuff that they don't teach you in school. I love this movie, man. So The Landlord, The Angel Levine with Harry Belafonte, his return after 10 years out the game. Sounder, Lady Sings the Blues, both from 1972, with both lead actresses nominated for Academy Awards. Say No More. Blackula, 1972. Coffee, 1973. Abby, 1974. Foxy Brown. Now, here's another important fact. If you're at home watching and maybe you didn't know this, if you've watched Coffee and then Foxy Brown, before we got to an era where we had like Creed 1, Creed 2, Creed 3, Jack Hill directed both of these films, but they didn't have, we're going to do Coffee 2 or Coffee 3. So that was Pam Grier's franchise when she did Coffee and Foxy Brown. So that's just a little note that I heard her say in an interview, or maybe she said it to me in an interview. But yeah, those were supposed to be
Sheba Baby.
Yeah, so that was like a franchise of characters that she was playing, but we didn't have franchises in the mid-70s. So then we go to Claudine from 1974, Sparkle, 1976, The Bingo Long, Traveling All-Stars and Motor King from 1976, 48 Hours. Oh, so I'm sorry, that's the 70s, right? And then I didn't put Penitentiary in there, so that should have been in there with Leon Kennedy Isaacs. The 80s we have that didn't make the list: 48 Hours, Trading Places, A Soldier Story, Beverly Hills Cop, Purple Rain, The Last Dragon, which literally was directed by Berry Gordy.
Berry Gordy.
The Color Purple, Coming to America, Glory. We're all from the 70s to the 80s, man. I'm gonna stop right there. Julian, you're young enough that some of those movies in those 80s, who didn't watch Show Enough in the Last Dragon? How do you miss that if you have a list of Black directors and that's Berry Gordy? So Berry Gordy didn't get any love for Mahogany. He didn't get any love for The Last Dragon. Those two films were very influential.
The Wiz isn't in there. The Wiz
is not in there, right?
And what's blacker than The Wiz? What's blacker than Motown?
You're right, exactly.
Like I don't like I was sitting here, I'm like, I'm gonna get you, sucker. Like to me, if you're gonna have Robert Townsend's Hollywood Shuffle, to me, because I saw that movie together as a kid with my family, Hollywood Shuffle, I'm gonna get you, sucker, because it's like they were friends. They were just making movies together, and they both satirized Hollywood in a different way. One is an actual narrative satire of blaxploitation, and the other is about satirizing actually trying to work in Hollywood. So I'm like, y'all really ain't gonna put Keenen Ivory Wayans, y'all ain't gonna give him his flowers? Oh, okay.
And to Charles' point earlier, Robert Townsend directed Raw.
Exactly. They were all working together with Eddie.
Yeah, they were all cool. I mean, Eddie and Keenen had known each other since they were 16. So those guys were always hanging out, man. And it's very interesting to me that Eddie Murphy, I'm like, Boomerang. How do you not put Boomerang on
the greatest romantic comedy
canon of Black
time.
film? Boomerang.
I don't know.
Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence,
Halle Berry,
Halle,
John, yeah.
Dude,
there's some
Mrs. Julian. How do you miss that?
I consider that the greatest romantic comedy of all time. I've seen just about every romantic comedy, and I dare someone to say something. There is no flaws in Boomerang. So I get you putting House Party. I love House Party, but if I'm picking Reginald Hudlin films to put in as canon, it's Boomerang.
Well, I think you got to have both, because
you got to have both.
House Party in there, and yeah, Boomerang. Yeah. I'm looking at you going.
Boomerang even got the soundtrack too. Like, it's like, what are you talking about?
Oh, I forgot.
Robin Gibbons.
We didn't even get to Wait to Exhale. How do you? I mean, now Wait to Exhale. I guess the director. No, Forrest Whitaker directed Waiting to Exhale.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. How Stella Got a Groove Back. That was another one. I mean, so there are some omissions that are head scratching to me. It really, I mean, like, I'd have been in the room going, wait. We doing what? What are we doing here? So
Waiting to Exhale is on there.
Waiting to Exhale is on there. Okay, cool.
I had to double check.
What about Crimson Tide?
No, but Best Man's not on here.
Now that's a surprise. That is a surprise.
And as you said, Love Jones isn't on here either. So I'm like,
that movie, of all, you talk about being the greatest romantic comedy. And you might be right with Boomerang, but come on.
Love Jones is a great romantic
love to Love Jones.
drama. I don't even consider that it's not. I'm not like chuckling at that movie. I'm just watching. I'm just taking in the everything, the vibes, the romance, the story. But like, how do you not have that in your lit? Like Love Jones, put it like this: if it's in white ass Criteria collection, then it should be in your list. They had to be shamed to putting movies out, and now they got it. You know what I'm saying? Like I bought it. I was pressed. Like Minister Society, Criteria collection. Like I don't know. Like it's just
hey man,
dead presidents. Where dead presidents at?
And you can go on and on. There's no Badass. There's no Ray. Badass, of course, directed by Mario Van Peebles. So there's
his dad. Yeah.
Stories.
We did say New Jack City. We didn't miss that one, did we?
Yeah, we said New Jack City. It's like it's crazy it's not in there.
New Jack City not being on this list is pretty interesting because I don't think you can do a list that's Black Canon without having 3 very important films from 1991. All 3 of them got to be on there. You got to have Boys in the Hood. You got to have New Jack City. And what was the 3rd movie that really rocked it that year? It was 3 of them. Oh, was it Spike Lee's? Was it
Jungle Fever? Wasn't it Jungle Fever that year?
Or was it? No, they got Mo Better. Which was
Mo Better's on there?
Mo Better's on the list.
Yeah. Jungle Fever, was that 91?
Yeah, I think so.
It was.
Because it had that.
Yeah, so
like
Jungle Fever is the other one that with Sam Jackson, who should have got nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Ozzie Davis, Ruby Dee, Wesley Snipes. Man, I'm telling you, bro. So there's a lot of missed opportunities. And I think this reminds me of a conversation I have with younger people a lot of times, that people have what I call really selective memory. Like we live in the now. And like if you try to take people back too far, people either try to diminish, marginalize stuff that happened really, really early and fail to understand or grasp the significance of a thing, right? So you hear me talk about, it's kind of cool. Like you don't think about, man, Sidney Poitier played a doctor. Yeah, he played a doctor in 1950 when nobody was playing a doctor who was Black. Hence, nobody was even being a lead man in films when Sidney Poitier came out there. And it was because of people like Joseph Mankiewicz, Ralph Nelson, Stanley Kramer, and a bunch of other people, man. This guy even had the career he had because they had to take a chance on Sidney Poitier. There was no blueprint to go, man, let's have a Black leading man and put him out there. Nah, that took hella courage on the studio's part. And this is pre-civil rights. This is before Emmett Till. This is before the Montgomery bus boycott. But somebody had enough foresight to understand that the country is moving in this direction. And, we got Rita Moreno over here. For Latinx folks, we need to have somebody over here who's Black, who's a leading man. So it's a huge, huge moment in Hollywood history, and it opens the door for everybody. Every Black actor or actor of color needs to thank Sidney Poitier, and the fact that you make a list and you say it's canon and he's not on there, dude.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Julian is pointing out all the obvious stuff, man.
Wait, there's no Paid in Full. There's no Belly. There's no ATL. And I say these things not just but like Paid in Full is like a cult classic crime movie.
You got Brown Sugar, right?
I think Brown Sugar is Brown Sugar. I think Brown Sugar's on there.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna look it up.
Wait, no, that's not on there.
It's not here.
Wow.
Because there's some movies that I like them, but like visually speaking, as time goes on, Belly is becoming more and more impactful. Because I know the story is not great. It's not. But you can watch that film muted.
Hype Williams, bro.
That's beautiful.
So wait a minute. Let me tell you, let me read you something that I read that I took offense with, right? Somebody wrote this when it came to Summer of Soul, right? Let me read it because I want to make sure I'm not missing this. It would have been enough, blah, 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 blah. The most fun I've ever had at a concert film, unapologetically Black and soulful from Odie Henderson. You do know that there was a documentary in 1973 called Watt-Stacks that had Isaac Hayes, all of the acts of Stacks, all the acts. I mean, so when you talk about documentaries, the fact that Aretha Franklin's doc, Amazing Grace, didn't make this list. But let's look at some of the movies that did make the list, like Zola in 2021 is not canon to me. I'm sorry.
I like it, but
It's not
I have
canon,
to agree.
bro. Come on,
like if
bro.
I gotta pick Zola over Paid in Full, I'm picking Paid in Full. Like there's a bunch of other movies that I'm picking. I'm picking Brown Sugar. And I like Zola. I'm a Zola defender. I read the tweets as they happen. I enjoyed that movie. Nah,
Garrett
bro.
Bradley, look, Garrett Bradley, I love you. I've interviewed you twice when you had a short film, and then they made it into a feature In Time by Garrett Bradley. Good film, but you got to be kidding me, man. Lovers Rock, which they have on this list, was a Amazon Prime television movie.
Series.
Shouldn't be on this list.
Well, technically, well, wait, I'll give it that because it's a BBC television film. But
Yeah, but it's a television film.
but again, what that opens up is, if we adding in TV movies, there's a bunch of HBO Black directed, written, starring films, Showtime. If we doing this, I need Jackson Family, American Story, whatever. I don't even need to tell the title.
Right.
Everybody know what I'm talking about. That's on there. That's
How
canon.
about Roots? How about Roots?
Again,
Well, Roots is a mini series, but I was saying Homecoming is on here, but no Amazing Grace, no Black Album. To Julian's point,
there's a bunch of documentaries. Like if you want to, that's a different list because if we spend the time talking about Black directed documentaries,
sorry to bother you.
I do like that film. I'll fight you on that one. That gets into my anti-capitalist.
And Boots is my dude, but damn. Okay. Hail Country this morning was an Oscar nominee.
I love Jordan Peele as much as anybody else, but Nope does not belong on this list.
It's sorry. Too new. It's too new. It got an age.
New. Yeah. Now I'm gonna tell you something. They nailed I Am Not Your Negro. That movie right there. That is like a revolutionary punch in the face. Every time I watch it, man, and I can imagine if you are not Black, that movie has gotta hurt watching. That's really
and then like if they put
why is OJ in America on here?
Because it's an 8-hour film. They showed it in the theaters. It got an Oscar. But if you doing that, then I need The Last Dance on there.
Bessie.
So that is one HBO film. That is one HBO film.
TV movie, bro.
But then we gotta talk about Miss Evans Boys and stuff.
We gotta talk about Cosby. Should be on this list as canon.
Wait. If you're gonna put that in, then where is Bill Cosby himself?
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, what is that? Is that and Live at the Sunset Strip is probably the two best Black films, comedian feature films that set a whole, that changed all the comedy. Like I don't even know about Black comedy before them because of my age, but technically you get the Cosby Show, you get Richard Pryor, that leads to Eddie Murphy, that leads to the concert film, that leads to Martin Lawrence, you get to Kevin, like you don't have it without those two things.
Yep.
One more. Their Eyes Were Watching God. Television movie. Shouldn't be on the list.
No.
It shouldn't be on the list. It's a television movie. So we're doing film, so you can't blend it because, like you said, it opens up the door.
You're generous in saying that it should be on the list because it's a television movie. I think it just doesn't belong on the list.
It shouldn't be on the list, man. All right, we got about a minute and a half, man. So we're gonna wrap up, man, and pretty much go. We've discussed, and I have a list, and I should just put it online at some point, man, and give people some recommendations of some things they really should be watching, man. But I would say out of that list, I think I would generalize and say 75% of it right. I think 75% is a good number, right? Because there are a lot of omissions. I had 20 films that I would put in there. Julian had another. So if you had to list at 100, I think you're almost there. You're almost where you
could make 100 easy. Even with just Black directors, even with just Black directors, you can get to 100.
And then take the made for television movies off, and then you'd be really good. Because if you want to do television movies, What about introducing Dorothy Dandridge? What about a bunch of these HBO?
That's what I'm saying. Miss Evers Boys.
Miss Evers Boys. There's a bunch of movies you can put on there, but
all the movies about the Tuskegee Airmen that had Lawrence Fishburne and everybody else in it. After
always outnumbered, always outgunned.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, there's a Lawrence Fishburne movie. He plays a guy named Socrates. That's
outnumbered, always
that
outgunned.
movie. Like I could watch that movie infinitely.
Socrates,
put it on.
No way.
I'm trying to watch. I can watch that right now.
Yes, sir. All right, gentlemen. I want to thank you for having this discussion. Please subscribe so that you can see more of our conversations and give us some comments, man. I mean, is there stuff we missing? Are we on point? Are we tripping? I don't really think we tripping. I think we hit the nail on the head with some of these movies. But send us some comments, man, at filmgordon@gmail.com for the show. And as I tell you guys in closing every week, please see something good at the movies. Julian, thank you for coming through, bruh, and representing and letting us know your thoughts. Charles Kirkland, as always, man, you're doing your thing, bruh. So keep on doing it. And I'm out at Mississippi at the 20th annual Oxford Film Festival. I'm letting you guys know where I'm at in case you're gonna find me. You like, yeah, he said he was down there. So until next time, we'll see you guys. You brothers take care, man, and enjoy your weekend, man. Peace, fellas.
Peace.